Hello, everyone. Back with another episode of Angular Space TV. Angular Space TV sounds very obnoxious, to be honest, but yeah, that's what we're called now. So I have a question for you. Have you ever used PrimeNG? I bet you did, right? Almost everyone I know in the Angular ecosystem has at one point used this very powerful UI library. And today we're all going to talk about it. Last week we did Taiga UI. This week we are doing PrimeNG. It's very interesting. Maybe we should turn it into a streak or something of that sort. And I'm very happy to say that today we are joined by the founder of PrimeNG, the man himself, Cagatay Civici. Hello there.
Hello,
Welcome.
Armen, how are you? Thank you for having
I'm
me.
fine. Thanks for reaching out. Thanks for coming. I'm very happy to talk about PrimeNG. I have big history with PrimeNG. It was my very first Angular library. I think for a lot many people out there, that's also true. So yeah, I worked a lot. Like last week, we were talking about Taiga. I had only vague ideas how that library worked. It was very interesting to like explore from that side. But this week, I have a lot of experience with PrimeNG. And yeah, congrats on building a library that is so powerful and so famous. Like everyone
Thank
knows it. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it has been a journey since 2016. We
No.
started.
Yeah.
We were actually. I always see myself as a Java guy. I mean, I
No.
started with Prime Faces,
Hmm.
Java Surfaces library, and now after the JavaScript libraries took over the web, server-side driven frameworks like JSF, and they were like they lost their space even in the Java world. And so we've switched to whatever that was popular back then. It was the time, it was an interesting time. It was the time when Angular 2 was out. During Angular
Yeah.
JS was being rewritten and rebranded to Angular 2. So 9 years still here for with PrimeNG. Yeah.
I would say like in 2017, I came to this my current job to start working with Angular 2, and PrimeNG has been a lifesaver because back then we didn't have this huge plethora of
Yeah.
libraries that had so many components out of the box. Like you had libraries here and there, but when we were doing like this large enterprise project which had this crazy UI and so on, we needed a lot of stuff. And most of the libraries like, yeah, this is good, but this is missing this and that component. Oh yeah, PrimeNG, apparently I look at it, it has everything. Great. So we're using it, and now essentially, especially at my workplace, I would say like 80-85% of Angular projects, and we usually do Angular, so it's like 80% of all our projects are using PrimeNG.
Well, that's interesting. Glad to hear because PrimeNG is still a third party. It's not from Google. Google's official library
Yeah,
is Angular Material.
yeah,
Even that there's a first party UI library. I think having being PrimeNG this much popular says something. Despite I think Angular is the only framework, let's say, which has an official UI library, forms and things like that, right?
yeah,
Other I don't remember that many. I mean, Angular has the idea is that it has everything: animations, forms,
yeah,
are even UI components. Not many frameworks the competition of Angular
yeah.
doesn't provide. Maybe it's a good thing, it's a bad thing, we don't know. But I mean, I think it says something for regarding prime ranges. It seems like there's a gap that Angular material didn't provide. So where PrimeNG and other libraries come in.
Yeah. This is really interesting because it means that like, yeah, we have a lot of stuff going out of the box, obviously, yeah, but wherever there is more like customization needed, like I wouldn't say obviously Angular material is bad or something like that, but maybe not everyone wants like material design, obviously depending on their requirements, and maybe they need some like a larger degree of customization, or they just have an issue with the API surface. Sometimes people don't like how Angular material does things. maybe they prefer the approach that PrimeNG has. And yeah, surely PrimeNG has filled like this big gap and became very important. So now it's like more important to talk about it because as far as I understand, PrimeNG is going through a bit of a rough times with a lot of changes, with a lot
Yeah,
of
we did.
updates. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the project is 9 years old. So when we started in 2016, I mean, we started developing UI components back in 2005 with JSF, and there was a time, maybe my age will come up, but I remember reading the news, IE7 is out and it's faster. So
No.
even then, so once you have started building libraries for IE7 in 2000s, now the legacy of PrimeNG is from there. So we have to keep modernizing it to make it stable, because this ever-changing technology pace. I mean, we are faced with new standards. For example, we were writing a lot of JavaScript for a certain case. Now we have a standard in HTML in DOM for something like this, like positioning, even rounded corners. We were doing hacks. So even basic things now, web technologies move on, and also Angular moves on. So we were doing a lot of ng ifs, for example, ng force, a lot of at inputs, change detection using like setter-based change detection, ng do changes, a lot of legacy stuff. Now Angular has moved on the new era where you have signals and new control. So it's like a different framework now when you see it. So now we were stuck with this old code base and old styling because web moved on. Our theming started to look outdated, and our APIs started internal implementation. So we first tackled styling. We also have a bunch of other UI libraries like React for PrimeReact and PrimeVue, for example. So we tried to unify them under a single modern styling, and that part was done in Angular PrimeNG 1819, and now we have reached a stage where we are able to move to modern Angular. And hopefully it will not be a revolutionary change, and it will evolutionary. We will just change things under the hood. No external APIs will change. It will be full back compatible. But of course, we have done many mistakes during the way. Maybe we can discuss them and what mistakes were done, like things like that. But yeah, PrimeNG overall is going through, let's say, modernization process. And we are close. I mean, we will just use modern API. We will just refactor the components to use modern Angular APIs. I think we will also add new components, let's say, that use modern techniques, more CSS, less JavaScript.
Yeah.
And I think that will be cool. I mean, with new, and also some new additions that we can discuss in the roadmap.
I would like to ask about, well, you talk about mistakes, and obviously when you maintain such a big project for so many years, you're bound to make some mistakes, even if not like by omission, but rather than circumstances may force you to implement something in a way that you know is not the best, but like in those circumstances, it may be like the best. So I would like to ask, and this, especially in the context of PrimeNG, it's very interesting. Like, what's your biggest regret? Like, you wish you could go back in time and say, okay, I wish I didn't do this way, or maybe we implemented this somewhat differently. What caused like the most trouble?
Unfortunately, many things. For example, I did two tables for Angular. One is P data table, the other is P table, which I called it later turbo table. P table was a custom element. P turbo table was fully directive based, which was way faster. It was a learning experience. But for example, a mistake was when the CSS layers became standard. Now every browser supports it. So the idea of a component library is that we thought maybe if we use CSS layers, people don't need to write stronger CSS. They can just use whatever they like, and they easily overwrite PrimeNG CSS. So the mistake I did was turn it on by default. And it was SAS-based. We had to compile it. There was not a dynamic switch. So we published these to the NPM. Now PrimeNG CSS became really, really easy to overwrite. And even by mistake, if you have like a reset CSS, tailwind, that removes default styling. it started to break PrimeNG, and now we couldn't revert it. Maybe we had some time. We should have reverted for release, but we stuck with it. Now with the PrimeNG 19, now it's all CSS and JS based. So we have a switch, and it's off by default. So it's enabling CSS layers one mistake, and another one was not using semantic versioning. So we have our own roadmap. Angular has its own 6-month life cycle for release. So we have to use their roadmap, the Angular team's roadmap. But we have our own plans, so we couldn't find efficient ways to synchronize our roadmap with them. So we couldn't use semantic versioning properly. So we had to include some breaking changes. But now we have also fixed that. With 19, we have switched to semantic versioning. There won't be any breaking changes, hopefully. And whenever we will include something, it will be like a flag. It will be like experimental or false by default. And you have to do it like turn it on, play with it. And then next release, it will be on. And maybe we should give proper warning. So sometimes we got ahead of ourselves and made some mistakes, like breaking backward compatibility. And we got some criticisms, which is, of course, understandable. But now, lessons learned with this, and we have a different, let's say, project management. And PrimeNG team is like 4 people, including myself. So we were not. Another mistake was not communicating enough. After we moved, after the COVID, we became fully remote, and that affected PrimeNG as well because we were not used to working remotely. And now that's also fixed as well. So yeah, that 18, 19, that year was a bit problematic, but now things are more stable. Let's say the storm has passed for PrimeNG. Now the future looks bright, hopefully.
Oh, that sounds very good because I think I worked with PrimeNG for like 6-7 years, then maybe moved to a little bit more of a managerial position. So I think the last couple, like 1 or 2 years, I haven't touched it that much. But my coworkers were a bit like stuck with the update for a while, and I honestly don't know what was the issue here. So is there some piece of advice that if someone is using, as far as I understand, the only like problematic situation was 18 to 19, right?
Yeah, the theming is the biggest issue. I mean, we had to rewrite the theming, dropped SAS-based variables, switched to, because a lot of the things with SAS, you can do it with native CSS. We had to rewrite the component CSS, and we had to include a lot of CSS variables, design tokens. We had to sync everything to Figma, because now we had a plan, like the dream was generating themes directly from Figma, which is now possible. And now to do that, we have to create a new theming API that's full synced with Figma, because when we started, there was no design tools, nothing. And now with Figma integration and PrimeNG theming, even the other libraries, they're all synced. So we had to do some rewrites, and unfortunately, there was no way of doing it. At least we cannot think of a way to make it backward compatible. That was the part. And we had this CSS library called PrimeFlex. And another mistake was maybe that should have been a Tailwind plugin. Now we had to drop it because we realized that we are UI component library vendor, not a CSS framework vendor. So we dropped PrimeFlex in favor of Tailwind, and now PrimeNG has a Tailwind plugin to make it used efficiently. And now people using PrimeFlex, although it was not backward compatible for like a month, so the timing was off. We should have provided the backward compatible version of PrimeFlex during the launch. But there was a lot of pressure because we missed 18. So I think there was no PrimeNG 18 for a year, although we did 6-month releases. So we missed after Angular 18, we didn't release PrimeNG 18. We just had to wait for another 6 years. So it took like a year to do PrimeNG. And yeah, it was interesting, right? So that was, I think, theming was the most painful part of it. So if people migrate, I mean, if they survive that, maybe they will keep using PrimeNG. We don't know, but the download numbers have increased since like
Yeah.
10%. We get like 2 million downloads per month. It was
Wow,
like
that's a lot.
5 million. Now the latest,
Yeah.
I mean, with the new theming, we were able to come up with the Prime blocks, the new
Yeah.
landing pages, the new everything, the showcase, everything was thanks to the new theming. So I hope the community would understand that we could do much more now thanks to the new theming. But the worst part is that we couldn't find a way to make it backward compatible. That's why the newer UI libraries are more luckier than us because they don't have a heritage.
No,
Uh,
no.
they can just
Uh,
they want to start.
yeah. Yeah. That makes sense, but I think in the life of any like big open source project, there comes this one day where they realize they need a bit of a shake up. I mean, in some way, Angular itself is going through some sort of shake up. They're
Yeah,
trying their best to be backward compatible and usually succeeding. But even with Angular, we see that there are lots of migrations we want to
yeah,
do, adopting
schematic.
signals, adopting the new control flow. It's still some work for the developers of applications that use Angular. So yeah, it's understandable. I think PrimeNG has managed to do a big job in this amount of time, and since
Yeah,
you think you're already on the stable ground, I would maybe ask like, what are the next big steps? What is
yeah.
there like some things you want to add or?
For example, just to add something to your point, with Angular 20, I think we've updated to Angular 20.1, and I think the animations were deprecated.
Yeah,
So our guides, when people install it, they see this deprecate because we had this animations module. We are using Angular animations, and since it was deprecated now after we released 20, now when people start asking why I'm getting this deprecation error, because when
yeah,
we release there, and we cannot just we have to wait for 21, for example. We have to switch to the new animation API or use our own internal API. Who knows? But it's some like ng class, ng style getting soft deprecated, things like that. I mean, we had hundreds of those. So we started to do something like using our own solutions to avoid things like that. We have our own P class directive, for example,
yeah,
things like that. Just as much as we can try to get less affected, because I think Angular will continue to evolve and zoneless and things like that are
yeah,
becoming the standard. And to support them, we also have to evolve. So the roadmap is actually to when uh, we will do 20.3.0 maybe in a couple of days. It's
yeah,
being tested. We have this feature called pass through, so where you are able to, these UI components are like black boxes. We provide if
hmm,
it's not directive based, like a p select, p dash select, p dash date picker, and like
yeah.
shadow DOM, it provides a lot of DOM, a lot of events. But the pass through attributes allow you to access to the contents of the
Oh,
DOM so that you can pass arbitrary attributes. For example, date picker has a cell, right, or
yeah,
display the date. You can even add a click handler, add a style, add a class, add any like even so, any arbitrary attribute like data attributes, accessibility attributes, even if there's invalid attributes, so that
oh,
you can have control over DOM without templating required. It's called PT. There will be a PT attribute, so that you
hmm,
will have a PT viewer as well that displays anatomy of a component, so that you can access to the internals of the DOM uh, from outside and inject any attribute. And another use case of this, because PrimeVue users has been benefiting from this, they are able to find solutions. For example, time to time, users ask for a new attribute, new property to customize
yeah,
something, and they have to wait for us to implement that. With this customization hook, they can add any attribute or event handler to any DOM element PrimeNG provides. So they don't need to wait for us.
yeah.
Uh,
I see people do appreciate it.
yeah, yeah.
The pass-through are so great in PrimeVue. Can't wait to get them in PrimeNG. So yeah, people already have
Another
experience with it.
feature is
Yeah,
that since the theming is pluggable, we will introduce the unstart mode so that you can just remove the theming altogether by setting unstart to true globally or per component. And then component will not generate any style classes, just plain transparent UI. Like imagine a date picker where it seems broken, but it just works, but the styling is missing.
Yeah.
So that we also had this in PrimeVue and coming up in PrimeReact as well. We have a rebranded library, spin-off library called Vault. Vault is like PrimeNG, but with Tailwind. So, Tailwind-based UI libraries are started to surface lately, like a couple of years. So they're popular due to popularity of Tailwind. Now with Vault, you are able to customize or style PrimeNG with Tailwind, and it will follow the component authorship. The components will reside in your application base instead of node modules, so that you can have styling integrated with your component. You can change borders, colors, everything with Tailwind, and you don't need to worry about overriding things or learning a new theming API. That has been done for Vue already, and it kind of works there. We will also bring unstyled mode to PrimeNG. And lately, we have started to offer this feature called CI pipeline for Figma. So these are product designers now are able to generate themes from Figma with one click. And we will try to take it a bit further by creating a Figma plugin for PrimeNG as well, so that they can open up the plugin and do some PrimeNG code generation and things like that. And also animation APIs, since deprecated in Angular, we will move to the new Angular animations in 21. I think we have like a month. I always check out the Angular roadmap to sync. So I think Angular 21 will come out in November, late November.
Yeah.
We plan to release PrimeNG 21 in late November as well with new animations. We may need to deprecate some templating options, for example, because we are moving to a headless direction where we provide a template, we pass some callbacks. For example, a dialog has a close button, right? A header. So instead of, we had this templates like slots, like close icon template where you are able to. So the idea is why the users need just change the icon. Maybe they will use their own button just to close. So the idea is that we pass a callback, like close callback, so that you create your own UI element, and at on click you bind the callback. So with this headless approach, you are able to customize the entire or some section of the comp. So you will see more headless features in PrimeNG 21. I think the most important part is modernization. So we have to support zoneless. So for the, let's say, refactored components, we will add a badge to the showcase, let's say zoneless, it's green, or like say refactored, updated, something like this. And that marks that component is now modernized. It uses new control flow, supports zoneless, uses signals everywhere. Signal forms are coming up. You also should support this, or things like so. Modernized version, and there will be some new components. Like we have a new gallery component that will replace Galeria. We have a new carousel implementation, more CSS, less JavaScript, as I mentioned. There's a new organization chart coming up. So one of the legacy components will be modernized with newer techniques as well. I think we have too many menus, menu bar, mega menu. We will also organize them under a single component with variants. And some components will be offered as directives. P input mask should be a directive, for example.
Yeah, I agree.
Things like that. I mean, these are based on community feedback or from our feedback throughout years. And you sit down in a minute, you say, why have I done this as a component? It should have been a directive, things like that.
I love directives, so I can definitely understand that. A lot of times I also look back and think, oh, this should have been a directive.
Yeah, definitely. I think, I work with other technologies as well. I think Angular is the most powerful directive. I mean, it will miles ahead of it. I don't think that React has any directives, and Vue has it, but it's very simple. And
Yeah.
when we work with Angular directives, it's night and day difference. So it was quite
Yeah.
powerful.
I really liked, yeah. I really like that when I asked about like what you're planning to change, like 95% of things what you said were not like new components, although you mentioned also the new components, but like things that would help developers build on top of PrimeNG and use it in a more efficient way, which I think people will appreciate a lot. And that's a really like the developer experience definitely is improving and will improve way more in the future.
That's the
Uh,
purpose, right? The UI
yeah,
component libraries should make developers' life easier, like AI,
yeah,
not get 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 into their way.
uh,
Sometimes, because when you know that there's a saying, when you use a third-party library, you get their features and you get their problems as well.
yeah,
And it's in your code base now, and
yeah,
so that's why we are trying to get out of the way as much as we can with 20, because with the there's a new era with new mental state in the PrimeNG team. We are thinking it differently because the users want a stable library. And for example, what's the first thing you do when you try to update any library? When you check out the changelog, what's the
yeah.
first thing you change? You check out.
Well, me personally, I think I go to documentation and I check the also the change logs, and especially obviously like the breaking changes
Yeah, yeah,
part. But
that's one.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, breaking changes. Then, and we realized this a bit late, probably, but when we were really excited, saying that okay, we have this feature now, that feature now, that part might be should be broken. And now,
yeah,
but the first thing people do is that they don't really care about that. The first thing is breaking changes. So that's why now on, since 20, we are writing breaking changes none. That's the best trophy that we are able to
yeah,
breaking changes none. Just
yeah.
drop and replacement.
I bet that is very satisfying.
Yeah, that's very satisfying for us. We've done
Yeah.
a lot of things, no breaking changes. That's the one.
I like that. So in the context of all of these changes, I think the one that people, I mean, in the modernizing part that people will be most interested, and I am most interested in, and you mentioned, is zoneless. So how is this transition going? Like, do you go around and try to figure out if a component might have issues with zoneless? And do you have like a roadmap separately for, oh, we need to do these things in all of components to be sure that it properly works with zoneless, or is it like only going step by step?
Yeah, I mean, we have to go step by step because there are too many components. We cannot promise that everything will be zoneless in 3 months. So we have to
Yeah,
go iteratively. So with each release, we will say, okay, this release brings 5 new modernized components. So zoneless is just one part of it. We will
yeah,
just move to the newer modern Angular APIs, and zoneless will just be a part of it. And of course, we will review like have we replaced all the ng ifs with the new control flow, for example. Are we using standalone everywhere? Are we, using code that
yeah,
might hurt the zones and
hmm,
things like that? And that's why I mentioned that it's coming as part of packages. Like with one
yeah,
release, we will have certain components, and maybe after a couple of months, we will reach a point where everything is now modernized. Every
yeah,
component is zoneless. We did this, for example, we did this for. Unluckily, we couldn't done it for theming because we cannot have a couple of components running on new theming, a couple of running on old theming. So we had to do it once. But with PT or with accessibility enhancements that we did last year, or let's say this one, we were able to do it iteratively, and iteratively works every time. So there's no pressure. We will just release, and
yeah,
working on it. But yeah, I'm excited about. I mean, PrimeNG had some reactivity issues as well because usually we had to drive states and try to sync it. It's
yeah,
the most common example is that filtering, and you filter a select item, select element. You have like a couple of options, and you type D and try to get all the items that start with D. So we had
no,
to keep another array like filtered items
yeah,
displayed because there was no computed or something like this.
Yeah, I
When
think
we-
I've seen that in the source code. Yeah,
because that means driving the state, not syncing it, because and we have to sync it when we drive the state because we create a new state, filtered items. We also have the items. So now with modern Angular, now we are able to use things like computed and things like that, so that the reactivity will be much better once we
Yeah.
start doing this. But for that, we have to migrate to signals.
yeah,
We have signals and computed here and there in the code base, but we also have at input. So there were parts
Yeah.
that were like that do not match, and now we will just refactor and hopefully.
Do you think the migration schematic will be used?
I think we should use it.
Yeah.
We couldn't offer it because we ran out of time when we do releases. We were a bit
Yeah.
late. Maybe last release was a month late than planned. So initial plan was providing schematics for some parts.
Yeah.
But because we had some use cases, we couldn't do it initially. Like it's like pressure on gaming studios where they had to release the game on a certain date. They couldn't. Sometimes they had to do it half baked, and they want patches. They do DLCs and things like that.
Yeah, but you don't charge for bug fixes after the release.
No,
That's the
beauty of open
difference.
source.
Yeah.
It's everything is free, of course, in the core. But we are really excited. I think that's the most important. I mean, you have this huge code base, and now the team is quite excited when I mentioned them that okay, guys, we have to move to the modern Angular era and drop because that's the code. We have still code from 2016 that could have been. I mean, we have migrated a couple of things for POC. It's all about deleting code because it's like with the new APIs, it's much more simple and clean.
So yeah, about that we actually have a question like relevant to that. Can we say that signal forms will make Prime components simpler? I think simpler from the perspective of source code. That's what I mean.
I don't know. I mean, in last release we created new examples for template driven and reactive forms. So we support both actually. And I think every time Angular comes up with a new feature, it's becoming more complex for us because we have the signal forms, reactive forms, template forms. But hopefully it will make things simpler. But I don't have hands-on hands-on experience with signal forms yet.
Yeah.
But, I mean, all the form components of PrimeNG should support signal forms for sure.
Yeah.
I'm just happy that Angular has its own forms library. Technologies that they don't have it. Every week there's a new form library coming out in React.
Yeah, I remember that when I think that was like 9 or maybe even 10 years ago. I had to learn a bit about React. I had no idea what React was, but there was something I needed to work on with it, and I was obviously also new to Angular because Angular itself was new. And I opened some tutorial. I read a bit about React, and then I needed to implement some form controls and stuff like that. And I went to Google and asked something like, "What is the form library for React? How do you do forms in React?" And I saw so many different approaches, so many different ways of doing that. I was like terrified. Angular, I absolutely agree. It's great. We have two now free forms approaches, though. I think at some point, at some point it's gonna converge on signal forms. I think.
Yeah. I mean, that's why one thing I love about Angular is like there's an official API, and in the other maybe methodology is like what makes Angular different from others. It's quite opinionated, right? So it's easier for to develop component UI library with that case.
Do you think you coming from a Java background kind of makes you biased here a little bit?
I mean, it made my transition easier because Angular chose, TypeScript, one of the pioneers of TypeScript back in the day, in 2006. I made my transition because I didn't have to learn a lot of new things, type-based language, being Java it is, and and maybe one thing that you will see in PrimeNG is that it's not really super Angular, let's say, very little RxJS, very little Angular things there. It's mostly DOM because it's UI components.
Yeah.
It's very different than Angular material. When I check the Angular material code, there are some parts that we do not understand. It's just, but this in PrimeNG case, yeah, it really helped actually. But in PrimeNG, you will see some heritage from Prime Faces as well, like things that should have been done differently. But that's what we were used to from Java world. Yeah, there are some. What do they call it in English? I forgot. Yeah, birds, no, something. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, just the clues, Okay, this was
like breadcrumbs.
Yeah, breadcrumbs. I think. Yeah.
Actually, I do have a bit of an experience with signal forms. The viewers of our episodes are probably familiar with it. Yeah, and I think actually supporting both like template driven and reactive and signal forms is probably not going to be as challenging as we may be thinking, because essentially to support signal forms you just need to provide signals for your disable state, value state, and so on, whatever you need, and you already kind of have that for like intuitively for implementing the control value accessor interface that we have already. We do keep those values, right? So you just turn those values into signals and give them the proper names, and also continue implementing the other interface, the CVA interface, together. You can implement two interfaces, and it kind of should work with both approaches. Obviously, no experience from my side, like actually implementing that, especially in a big library. But I think that's going to be the. Yeah.
I mean, in our case, we must do it. There's no other way. It's because the community will ask for it, and there's no other way. We have to support it one way or the other, and keep supporting template-driven and reactive as well. I think it should be possible.
Yeah, I think even if like signal forms become stable like next year, still at least for 5 years, I bet the previous forms will be still like in the long-term support. Yeah.
I assume that in enterprise world where you have this really complex forms, no one's going to migrate them to signals, I guess, anytime soon.
Even if we wish to, like, there's often I remember some really like painful forms I had to work with, and I think like, man, I wish signal forms existed back then. But also when I think about that, maybe I would need to migrate to signal forms, like that particular terrifying form to signals, that also kind of gives me a headache.
But you got the point. I mean, when PrimeNG users will try to use signal forms, they will visit issue tracker and say, okay, this component doesn't support it. And because that's why we have to support it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So because I have this amount of experience with PrimeNG, I also went, although before asking about source code, because I probably have some questions about the source code too, there are things that are interesting to me. But especially one thing that was always interesting was, so we have components that have content projection, right? For example, if I remember correctly, it was called tab view, right? You have tab view, and inside you have tabs or tab panels. I don't remember the exact name. And it works via ng content, right? So you just drop in the child component in the content projection. And in other scenarios, like for example with the table, you have ng templates with this p template directive, which is actually a very interesting approach to this, having a directive for ng templates. So what's the like what's the thinking like why in some cases content projection and in some cases ng templates, like is there upside
It's
downside
like a
approach?
component altering methodology change. We also rewritten tabs and accordion in PrimeNG 19
Yeah.
to use this more like directive approach, and
Oh,
it doesn't do much. Just adds. It also still has content projection, but there's a new tab list. There's a tab is a separate component. Tab
yeah.
content is a separate component. Accordion is the same. Because I think there was a couple of shortcomings that we had some issues generating tabs dynamically. In that case, with content projection, it was not working properly. I think with with the table case, as I mentioned, the old table was not using that; it was using content projection, but it was really slow. It was like a black box where you have editable
Yeah.
rows, scrolling, everything was
Yeah.
working. The directive is there, and there was no way of turning it off. With that directive approach of the new table, we had this: the users are able to apply whatever they need. Like
Yeah.
it's not fully lazy, but less work for the DOM and less work for change detection. So the main reason for that difference is performance, actually.
No.
But I still had some problems with the content projection. One issue I remember is that when we were using ng content, whatever I read an issue about it this week. The problem still, I think it has issues that I still complain about, and it was documented.
Yeah.
I haven't checked the latest state, but when project a content using ng content, the lifecycle methods were not called, so we were having troubles.
Yeah.
Another issue was we had to use ng template outlet for that as a workaround, because whenever we push content, it was called properly. So we promoted that as a workaround. Another issue with ng content is that suppose that you nested animations, you open a dialog with animation, and in that dialog, there's another component that use animation, like accordion tabs, where they slide up and down. And in that case, when we were opening dialog, accordion was also moving where it was not supposed to move.
Oh.
And we had no way of changing it, because with content projection, Angular decided to run animations too. So we had some issues with content projection. I'm not sure about the latest state. And there's a really nice feature in a view, which is the default content, so that you can place some content.
Yeah.
If the user provides content, it will override it, so that we don't have to use if else. We can just use the fallback. Now it's
I
available.
think. Oh yeah, right. Now we
Yeah,
have that also
things
in
like that. I
Angular.
mean,
Yeah.
when we work with different libraries, you notice those things. When you
Yeah.
work with a single library, maybe you never read it.
Huh.
We've written a P class directive lately just to support the view or class names of React. It's
No.
quite popular. That syntax in Angular. Maybe, I mean, probably people needed that, but now they write, after the deprecation of ng class, they have to write class for multiple class bindings.
Yeah.
Now, class, we can support arrays, objects, and any combination of them, and small things like that. And also, there's a p bind. Angular, for example, React and Vue will pass any attribute, any property, and will be merged with your properties. Angular doesn't do that, so we have to write p bind and things like that. I mean, there are a couple of things that we, as a UI component library author, that we really like to see in Angular. Hopefully, they are coming, but still, Angular is focused on application development. I mean,
Yeah.
component, it's more about the DOM, not the application business logic and signal forms. We are really about opening box on top of another box and
Yeah.
make it like a selector. That's our job. So in that cases, we are really hoping that Angular will give us more tools to work with.
So maybe another interesting thing to discuss would be, especially in the context that last week we were talking about another UI library. So what do you think is like the signature of PrimeNG? Like what makes it different in a way from other popular libraries?
Well, I think writing UI library for Angular is a bit tricky, because we
Yeah.
don't see that many compared to React and Vue, right?
Yeah.
Especially React, you have dozens, and Vue is also picking up. So it's a bit, maybe people find it a bit hard to get started with Angular, and that reflects to not Angular not having that many community-driven UI libraries, because maybe can you name more than 5 that gets a lot of downloads? We have Angular Material. Maybe there's Angular Material. That's why people shy away. Okay, there's the first part. Why should I?
Yeah. That's actually an interesting thought.
Yeah, we never know. But the one thing that makes it different is it's like, I would call it design agnostic, because Angular Material is material. For us, material is just a theme. You just configure. Okay, I want to use material. Your entire application can switch to material theme in a second if you change the default theme Aura to material. We also have a bunch of, and we have a team designer to bring your own brand. So if your organization is not really a fan of material, then PrimeNG is like the obvious alternative. And with the new enhancements, like the more advanced unstart mode and things like that, we will take it a bit further. But I would say many solutions, and we will start writing this 8 new components, quite advanced, like Prime Charts, Prime Grid, with like a spreadsheet-like component, an event calendar, HTML text editor, flow chart, Gantt chart, pivot table, things like that. We've just started working on it last week, and that you will probably not find in any other library like Material. But so it's the full package. You have team design, schema, blocks, templates, and things like that, and where the core is always open source and will be open source.
Can I tell one fun fact from history with us working with PrimeNG? I think in 2017 we used a PrimeNG paid template. I don't remember which one was it. I think it was called something like Barcelona or whatnot. I don't remember. Maybe So we had a client who wanted this sort of design and so on and so forth. So they paid for it. They brought that over. We started developing with it. Then they came up with this design of their own, and they started like, please change this, please change that. And now today, if you look at that application that fully uses that template, you won't believe that it is actually that theme. They changed so much that it's kind of like baffling to me.
Maybe a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, in Godfather, there was a scene. The Vito Corleone was saying, "Look what they done to my boy," and we have this funny joke when we see a template that has been extremely customized and doesn't look good as we intended to be, because we spend a lot of time pixel perfecting things, and now we deliver that, and I mean, people can do whatever they want. Sometimes they can break things, they can break the UI, and we were saying, look what I've done to our template. And maybe, I mean, in that case, I really don't suggest people buying a template. I mean, for example, things like blocks will be easier, because instead of like Prime Blocks gives you the ability to choose your sidebar, your top bar, your footer. Maybe you don't need it. And especially the ones in template markets, I'm not sure. I think they will be full of junk probably, because PrimeNG has its own UI library, and template authors, they have to get date picker somewhere, buttons from somewhere, flex from somewhere, and how will they look in Armen? They keep overriding customizations over customization, and you end up with a package JSON with 500 lines of packet dependencies. With PrimeNG, we try to keep it as much as simple and clean, so that's why. Barcelona was a nice template. It was material.
One question I also have is maybe about well, we know that most of PrimeNG components support templating, so we can, for example, if you have a drop down, you can you obviously pass your options object array, and then you bind it with the form control, and you get the drop down. If you want to customize like the items, you can use the p template directive and on an ng template, and it works fine. But I've heard, for example, people ask, why isn't this like the default approach? Why am I passing an input object and customizing it if I need it to? Instead, like for example, in material, you pass like you have a mat select drop down and mat option, and it's a generic question. It's not about drop downs in particular, but I think recently people have gone a bit animosity towards inputs.
Yeah.
So is that like a design choice, or is that something that you plan to change in a way, or?
Yeah, I mean, just right now we are rewriting PrimeReact because we have used this
Yeah,
option label, option value things for
yeah,
React. And people moved on to this extreme level of primitives where even they have components for select trigger, select arrow, select panel, select things like that. And so we
yeah,
are always debating: are we going to propose this option label, option value thing again? Because that's the legacy from Prime Faces. We have this option label, option value from there actually. And now, yeah, we are thinking about gradually, moving to more template-driven approach, especially with
mm,
those kind of components, and make them default, still while supporting the older approaches as well. So, as I mentioned, it was maybe everything was doing that way in 2016, 17. Now people are thinking about different things. They're seeing an approach in another library. They are looking for it. But yeah, we are. That's one thing that's part of the modernization process that I mentioned
yeah,
that will begin in 21. Uh, as long as we don't break backward compatibility, we will provide new ways of defining using components for sure.
yeah.
For example, if a directive works, we will just you go with directive.
That's very good to know. Like a clear direction, and kind of, I hope everyone who is watching will be better prepared for what's to come. And now I want to ask maybe a little bit controversial question. I love controversial questions, and I kind of feel from how you talk about it that PrimeNG is kind of your favorite out of PrimeReact, PrimeVue, PrimeNG,
Yeah.
right? But like, actually, which one is the easiest to maintain?
I think PrimeView could be the easiest to maintain
Ah,
because Vue.js did their stuff between 2 to 3. They've rewritten a lot of things.
yeah,
They brought in a new API for options to composition. They break a lot of changes. I mean, they didn't care about. I mean, they also learned their lessons. When I
yeah,
talked to them and joined their events. Uh, Now after Vue 3, things were stable. I mean, you get new releases, nothing is broken. But with Angular is trying to innovate, try to reinvent itself with like
yeah,
signals and things like that. Maybe they should. I mean, Vue has done it in one release, 2 to 3. With Angular, every 6 months you get a new feature. You get zoneless, you get signal forms. The next one, God knows what. And now we will see. Maybe I would prefer that approach so that we migrate with everyone else. We migrated and application developers migrated.
yeah, yeah,
I think that's one. The core, because we are a third party, we rely on an API in React. And React as well, it doesn't change drastically. You have the states, you have the effects and things like that. Angle is just a bit, changing it a bit more than we, let's say, we
yeah,
want. That's why. And while we are trying to catch up, Angular comes up with a new experimental API. And
yeah,
now, let's say, animations are deprecated in an point between 20.2. They didn't even wait for 21, for example.
yeah.
Uh, I don't know. That I think Vue and React could be the easiest to maintain. With PrimeNG, we always have to play the catch-up game, but
Yeah.
that's fine.
I think that also comes a lot from the thing that Angular tries to be very backward compatible itself.
Yeah.
And all the changes we don't get them in one drastic release that we wait like, oh, 2 years from now they will roll this big release, we will do this big upgrade, and then everything will be shiny. Instead, they're like, okay, we're introducing this slowly, yeah. But it can also, as we can see, this can also affect open source maintainers. So it's a big scale to balance.
I mean, Vue has redone their reactivity system between 2 and 3.
Yeah.
We get the refs and reactive and things like that. There's a new API. In Angular case, they introduced the experimental signals and effects. I mean, maybe that's the way it is. I mean, it's open for discussion, but that means we also have to keep an eye on Angular all the time. We don't do it for React and Vue, checking what they're up to, but with Angular we always get and stay up to date with Angular, so that we can prepare ourselves.
Yeah. That's really a lot of new things to know about PrimeNG. I hope people that, well, I'm not doing front end actually right now for the most part, but people who watch this do. So I hope they get a lot of new information about why it works the way it does and what to wait for in the future. Oh, and we have a new question. Are you in contact with the Angular team to be aware of new changes that are planned?
I mean, Angular team also has changed during the years since 2006, right? I mean, we had nice contacts, but I think they left the Google or left Angular altogether. But in Angular PrimeNG 12 or 13, we had really nice relations. Even they sent PRs to support PrimeNG. We had a PR from them that rewrites are built because we were not able to migrate to Ivy. Remember Ivy? The Vue, the compiler.
Yeah.
So the Angular team has contributed that, for example. But now lately, I think the Minko has moved on to a different role in Google. So we are not that much, let's say, in touch as in the past.
Yeah. I think one thing that also, like, I will try to make a guess because, for example, I look at different components in PrimeNG. I remember working with many of them. For example, the table, the new one, right? It used to be a turbo table, right, in the past, and then it changed, and the new one is great. I always loved working with it. Very simple API, lots of flexibility. And if I would guess, like, which component people don't like the most, and probably even maybe you and the other maintainers, that would probably be the date picker, formerly known as calendar.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah. It's right now we are rewriting it to date picker in React.
Yeah.
And it's like a table. It's the same complexity. I mean, there's a month picker, time picker, year picker. It's like a giant component itself. So, and I think we have also done some changes to it because you display multiple mounts. You have a range picker. It's very complex component, frankly. So, yeah.
So with the date picker has more flexibility as far as I understand. I haven't used the new one. I have used the old one a lot. So
Yeah,
like,
templating
changed mainly.
change with new features. Yeah, the calendar is reserved. Calendar name we decided to do it for event calendar that's coming up, where you have month view, year view. You drag and drop events. You schedule things. That's the new component coming up. So that we switched the name to date picker. Still support the old name for a while, but yeah, I mean we are still. I mean there are still a lot of things to improve, like adding more headless support for that, so that you can render your own dates. For example, we pass you what to render and what's the selected one, the events, and so that's why we are really focusing on adding more headless features to the components, and date picker being one of them.
That makes sense. Funnily enough, Angie Mateo says, thanks, guys. And as far as I can see from this icon, they're watching us on Twitch, which is funny. Thank you, Mateo, for watching us from Twitch, because I tried to turn off the Twitch live stream to instead stream on LinkedIn. before it started, but now I think that maybe it didn't allow me to do it. So thank you for watching on Twitch. I didn't know anyone was watching the live stream on Twitch. Yeah.
Yeah, thank
So
you.
I think I've ran out of questions. There's simultaneously like
Yeah,
a lot of things you can discuss,
yeah,
and also kind of we have this new idea and appreciation of the library. So is
yeah.
there something in general that you would like to say to people who use
Uh,
PrimeVue, like
I would like
an
to thank
advice?
everyone for joining, tuned in, or the ones who tune in. I think maybe one sentence, maybe a couple of sentences. We are just entering year. What year is this? 9 years it has been.
Yeah.
We are entering year 10, so we have to do something special. That's where we try
Okay.
to modernize, on start mode. But this, I mean, if you forget the technical side of things, we are still after 10 years. We're still excited to maintain PrimeNG and keep improving it, and contribute to the Angular ecosystem. And as long as it goes, we will hopefully be here. We will see. And you know what they say, always bet on Prime.
Yeah, I agree. It has been like this very stable force in the Angular ecosystem. A lot of things changed. If I pick up my very old projects, I will probably see libraries that stopped being maintained at some point, maybe got abandoned or replaced by something new. But yeah, PrimeNG is really keeping it strong, man.
Yeah, it's
No,
the advantage
yeah,
of being a company backed, because that's the only thing
yeah,
we do. We just do component libraries.
yeah,
And in open source, you have a kit, you have to stop maintaining the open source project.
yeah,
You start a new, you change jobs, you have to stop maintaining. You start commuting, there's a life change in your,
yeah,
you stop, you don't, you lose your motivation, get distracted by a new shiny thing. But in prime libraries, that they are stay, and that's maybe the value is the longevity, is sustainable, is here
yeah.
and will stay, and we will keep improving it. And still interesting, they have a lot of passion.
That's great. That's great to know. I mean, it's kind of hard to maintain a passion in something for 10 years.
Well, we are used to criticism here and there, so we have
Oh,
to know how to respond it. Otherwise, in open source, it's quite tough mentally, because you do it for free and you get a lot of harsh feedback and criticism,
yeah,
and you start questioning why I'm doing this. I should do some wipe coding AI app, start selling it, or
yeah,
I'm wasting my time on it.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, once you get that point and you start trying to extract criticism, positive criticism, feedback, and you start improving, and if you're confident with the product, if you have a clear roadmap, and I think monetization part is also working fine for us with add-ons. We found a nice sweet spot where the company has no investor, for example.
yeah.
The but there's a huge community base, and we have paid add-ons, and based on open source core, it's like a sweet spot, and we will keep building upon this, and hopefully, as I mentioned, hopefully be here for Angular.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I think, yeah. Let's also kind of use this moment and remember that behind every open source library, there are people who maintain it, and it's easy to kind of get mad at them for breaking changes or not appreciate that work that much. But open source currently kind of runs the world.
Yeah,
Almost everywhere you look, there are open source projects maintaining this or that part of like really critical infrastructure. And I really appreciate you and everyone on
thank you.
the Prime team for doing that. And yeah, people appreciate too. And I hope you don't get this many turbulent moments like you did with the recent releases,
Yeah,
and
yeah. Hopefully
you
that
go on
part is
with the
gone more.
stable stuff.
Yeah, hopefully.
So yeah, thank you very much for
Thank you.
coming today.
All right.
Please, if you have anything new in the future, you're welcome. Let's talk again. New releases, new features,
Sure.
new stuff, whatever. Yeah,
Sure. Let's meet maybe next year. These times we will
yeah.
present Prime
10 years of
and
PrimeNG, right?
23, 24, who knows.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you too. Thanks everyone for joining. Use PrimeNG, check out the latest stuff, and let's meet on the next one next week.